All right, today I'm going to demo to you guys how to add value to your 1-point perspective drawings. In our last class, we worked with value, okay? Value is simply the lightness or darkness of a form or item or object. Today, you guys need to consider how you can apply value in your 1-point perspective drawings. And as you are finishing, if you're not ready for this step, you're finishing adding your details. Once you have added all of your details, then you need to move on to the value step. So when we look at these forms, we can see that there's a shadow, there's a light source. As things recede from the light, they become to be shadow. And then there are all the grays transitioning from light to dark. That's what we want to think about as we are shading our cities. We want to think about where the light source would be. We want to think about how we can transition from light to dark gradually. Okay, I've done 2 examples here because these seem to be the most common ones most of you are doing. If you have the bird's eye view, okay, you have hopefully created all of your buildings already. You may be adding some windows or other details to your buildings, making sure you are following your vanishing point. If you are ready to start shading these in, I want you to think about where is the sun in real life. Well, the sun is in the sky. So that means if the sun is in the sky and these buildings are a bird's eye view, we know that they are going to be below the sun, which means the tops of the buildings are going to be getting the most sun, and the buildings as they recede into the distance or towards the ground are going to be getting the least amount of sun because they are down and away from our light source, okay? So in order to apply that, what you want to do, again, once you have your basic shapes drawn out and you have your details, again, you could have chosen to add bushes, trees, other objects to your scene. Maybe you have a road, maybe you have cars, maybe you have, I don't know, I'm thinking like maybe there's like a pool or something here. Sounds kind of fun. Just kind of like a helicopter type view of what this part of the city might be. All right, then you are ready to start adding value. So applying the concept of the fact that the sun is in the sky and the buildings are receding from the sun, you are going to shade the buildings as they go towards the vanishing point. So again, if they are closer towards the vanishing point, they will be darker. If they are farther, they will be lighter. So I'm using just my pencil here first to apply the pigment or the pencil lead. Okay, you have to put down the lead before you can blend it with the blending stump, which you guys practiced on Friday. Okay, we'll go over to this one right here. Of course, there are a lot of other things that could have value. For example, I could shade in the road here. I could shade in the trees, the pool. So push yourself to try and think, okay, where else could shadows be? Don't just do the bare minimum. Think about how you can have your shadow wrap around your form. What is the form of the object and how can you demonstrate that in the way you create the value, just like we did in our 4 different forms. So I've put down some basic value there. I'm going to take the blending stump and I'm going to start to pull that value from the darkest area up the building and trying to fade it into the light. The tops of your building should be almost completely in light. Exception might be if you want to make it look like there is maybe a fence or a border inside your building. There might be a ledge. So you could create a little interest that way. Again, I'm just using the blending stump there. I actually am just using the lead that is left on the blending stump even, which can certainly be enough. Okay. So this building, I made quite a wonky building here to be kind of a little more interesting. Now, I blended it nicely, but I lost my dark values just because of smudging away the pencil lead there. So I want to go back in with my pencil here, and I'm going to try and bring back those dark values. And I really want to push the different contours of this building, the nice kind of little peaks that I created there. Okay. Just want to really push those out and make them interesting and attention grabbing. I want to clean up my edges if I get a little bit of my blending beyond the shape there. Okay, just kind of clean everything up. When you are working with 1-point perspective, you do have to be sort of crisp with your application. And again, it's pencil, so if you feel like you got a little bit outside the lines there, simple fix is to just go back in and erase some of those places that you need to be sharper at. Right here I have a building overlapping a building, so there's going to be a big shadow here because this building is blocking out some of that sunlight from the building it's next to. So I'm going to really push a nice little shadow right there where those 2 buildings are overlapping. Okay, gives us a nice little depth there. And of course, again, if I were going to make a longer video here, I would maybe add some value to even, for example, the road. If it were to be concrete or blacktop, it would certainly have a little bit of a gray value to it. It would not just necessarily be straight white. Okay, that also helps us to create a little more of a perspective. Maybe I would add some value into the little pool area here, trees. So really take your time on this last step of adding the value, because that's going to make a big difference as far as how these look, whether they are completed with a high level of craftsmanship or not. And again, you can even think about, how you can use value above or in the top parts of the building. Here's a quick example of how to use value if you are doing the down the street view. Okay, this also applies if you are drawing a room. I know several of you are making a room. With this one, we want to apply the concept of farther equals darker. Okay, so as you can see, I have several buildings quickly kind of sketched out here, just the basic shapes. And as they recede into the distance, it's harder for us to see because the light is less. Maybe there's a street light down there that's not quite lit. Maybe it's just so far in the distance that the buildings are putting each other in shadow, and because of that, we can't see what's in that distant area. So if you want to shade with these buildings, if it's farther or closer towards your vanishing point, it will be lighter. So I'm going to do a very simple way to do this here, which is by starting right at your vanishing point, and I'm just going to create a little value scale from my vanishing point out towards the edges of my buildings. Now again, if you are going to apply some texture concepts here, like maybe one of these walls is made of bricks, you'll need to go back and kind of create that texture over top of your value scale. But you can kind of start with your value scale if you're not sure where to go. And then you can see I'm going to lighten up here as I'm getting towards the edges of my paper, because now it should be in a fuller light. Okay, I'm going to go in there with my blending stump now and just kind of polish and smooth those values. Really trying to make sure I have at least 4 values here. So I should have a really dark gray, I should have a nice medium gray, and then I should have a very light gray before I reach white. Okay, and you really create a nice depth here once you are adding the value, and that's going to push these buildings to be more interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go back in here and darken my farthest away building to really, again, get that nice contrast and variety of value tones. Okay. And again, I will show you quickly, if you want to, you can still create your textures easily over top of your value as long as you haven't gone too very dark. So let's, on this building right here that I just shaded in, I'm going to make a quick little brick wall. And again, I'm placing my ruler on my vanishing point, moving it down. All right, and you can see that I have my value there. I already kind of placed it in there. You could also have your texture and, shade your value over top. Nice versatility of a pencil allows you to do some of that kinds of stuff. All right, okay, so there I made a little kind of brick wall, place little vertical marks. All right, so I have now value and texture in this little section of my city, and it's gonna create an overall interesting perspective. All right, so same concept would be applied here. Start with my dark and get lighter as I go toward the edge, and just continue to work on these, and I will try and get a final of these so you guys can kind of see how that turned out. Just like when we did the cube, if you have a wall that is flat or going away from the light, okay, so we're making a little corner here, it needs to be a completely different value so that we can really see it. So for example, I have this front side of my building here, and then I guess this side is kind of like turning away. So I would want to shade that a different value than this gray here. I can leave it white. That would probably be the simplest thing to do. And then it has this feeling of there's like light coming from here, and it's obviously not catching there. Or I could have shaded it in to be a little darker. So I'm going to take my blending stump and just kind of push my gray a little bit farther towards that corner there. Okay, and here I drew a window, which lines up to my vanishing point, and then I also made a fun little horizontal line in here, so it kind of looks like a like a parking garage or something that you could drive into. So just other fun things you can do, and I'd want to apply some value inside that shape to give it the feeling of it's underneath this sort of overhang. And of course I need to have contrast in my value shape so I can see the shapes next to each other. So you can see here I'm shading this quite a bit darker than I made the building itself so that I can actually see the contrast there. Okay. All right, thank you guys for listening, and I can't wait to see these when I get back.